Welcome back to Mia Horror Stories. Tonight's tale title is Best Experienced in the Dark, which is why the screen will stay black. No distractions, no flashing images, just you, your imagination, and the story. So sit back, relax, and listen all the way to the end, if you dare. The chain link gate didn't squeal when I pushed it open. It should have. Every time I'd walked past this park in daylight, that hinge sang like an old screen door, loud enough that you'd look up without meaning to. Tonight it moved like it had just been oiled. Smooth. Too smooth. I stopped with one sneaker inside and one out, hands still on the cold metal, and listened for any small sound that would put the world back in place. A car hissed by on wet pavement 2 blocks away. Somebody's TV murmured from an upstairs window. A dog gave one lazy bark, not alarmed, more like commentary. The playground sat in the center of the lot like a toy left out after the kids went to bed. Plastic slides, a climbing cube, a set of swings. The orange streetlight at the corner of Maple and 3rd didn't quite reach it. It made a dim gradient that died halfway across the rubberized surface. The dark parts weren't pitch black, just unclaimed. Like the light had decided it had done enough for the night. Are we doing this, or are we standing here forever? Mason's voice came from behind me, close enough that I caught the warmth of his breath on my ear. I glanced back. He had his hoodie up, hands shoved deep into the front pocket, shoulders hunched like the air was colder than it was. Mason, 28, male, my older brother by 3 years, which meant he'd been the one to teach me to ride a bike, and also the one who used to lock me out of the house when I got annoying. He looked at the playground the way you look at a closed store you don't feel like arguing with. "I'm listening," I said, like that made sense. "To what?" "To the gate," I said, and immediately regretted it. It sounded like something a person would say right before they decided the shadows were speaking to them. Mason snorted, a short laugh he didn't commit to. "It's a gate. It doesn't need to sing for you." Behind him, Lena caught up, jogging the last few steps like she didn't want to be the slow one. She stopped at the entrance and tucked hair behind her ear, eyes scanning the park with that bright, analytical attention she couldn't turn off. Lena, 26, female my friend since college, now a physical therapist with the posture of someone who told people to engage their core for a living. She held her phone in her hand like it was a flashlight even before she turned the light on. "Okay," she said, like she was starting a session. "We're here. I'm officially on record that I thought this was a dumb idea." "Noted," Mason said. I kept my hand on the gate a second longer. The metal was cool, damp, and it left a thin slick on my palm. The air smelled like fallen leaves and the faint sourness of the dumpster behind the community center. Somewhere in the grass, a sprinkler head clicked as it cooled. The park was ordinary, normal, just late. I should explain why we were at a playground at night. Because in any other town, it would be weird in the way a middle-aged guy doing pull-ups at midnight is weird. You glance, then you forget. But I'd been in this town 3 weeks and already learned that don't go to the playground after dark was one of those rules people followed without realizing they were following it. When I first heard it, it came out casually, in the same breath as don't bother ordering sushi from the deli, and the left lane on 3rd is a trap after the bridge. It wasn't a warning delivered with drama. It was more like, "Why would you do that?" "I'm Elliot, 25 male, and I moved to New Haven, Connecticut, not the famous one, because my job went remote, and my rent in Boston had become a personal insult. New Haven, this one, sat along the river with a few red brick streets and a train station that smelled like burnt coffee and old newspapers. It had a hardware store with a real bell on the door and a bar where the bartender remembered names and mispronounced them in the same friendly way every time. I'd come here trying to be the kind of person who could handle quiet. That was the motive. That was the brave version of the story. The less brave version was that I'd been jumpy for months, ever since a late-night incident in my old building where someone had tried apartment doors down the hall, and I'd frozen behind my own, hand hovering over the deadbolt like my brain couldn't decide if locking it would make noise that would invite attention. Nothing happened. The person moved on, but the feeling didn't. It came with me like a stain I couldn't wash out. So when people in town avoided a playground after dark, my mind cataloged it with everything else that made the world feel slightly less controllable than I'd been pretending. It started with Mrs. Wilkins downstairs. She was in her 70s, the kind of older woman who wore clean sneakers and could lift grocery bags that made my arms ache. We'd been in the hallway at the same time, both doing that awkward dance of trying not to block the narrow stairwell with our bodies and our stuff. "Just so you know," she'd said, casual as anything, "they lock the playground gate at dusk. Or they're supposed to." "They do?" I asked, because it hadn't looked locked when I walked by after dinner. She gave me a look like I was missing the point on purpose. "Either way, you don't want to be there after dark. People don't go. Because of kids." I tried. She shifted her bags higher on her hip. "Because of people," she said, and then she smiled like she'd said something harmless. "Anyway, welcome. If you need sugar, I have it." Lena heard it from her coworker at the clinic, a guy named Nathan who ran marathons and talked about knee joints like they were a hobby. "Avoid the playground after dark," he told her when she mentioned she'd moved to Maple Street. "We had a thing a few summers ago." A thing like what Lena had pressed, which was Lena's default setting. Nathan had shrugged in that way people do when they want to be done with a subject, but don't want to be rude. "Just don't. It's not worth it." Mason heard it from the bartender at Riley's when he came into town to help me set up my place. "Playground's fine," the bartender had said, wiping down the counter with a rag that smelled like lemon cleaner. "Just not after dark. It's got a reputation. You hear everything in a town this size," Mason had answered, and the bartender had laughed like Mason had said something clever. Then he slid us another bowl of pretzels like the conversation was over. It bothered me more than it should have, because nobody would finish the sentence. Not even a hint of what the reputation was. Just this shared, quiet agreement that the playground belonged to the daylight and the dark belonged to something else. Not ghosts, not monsters. Real life doesn't do that. Real life does teenage kids and alcohol and petty violence and people making bad choices where nobody is watching. Which is why, as a rational adult who absolutely did not want to be the kind of person who spiraled over half-heard warnings, I'd brought witnesses. "Your gate theory is still hilarious," Lena said, stepping in and turning on her phone flashlight. The beam cut a clean white circle across the rubber surface, revealing dirt scuffs and a crushed juice pouch and something metallic that glinted, and then was just a bottle cap. "I'm not saying it's haunted," I said. Did anyone say haunted? Mason asked, too quick, and then he cleared his throat like he wanted to swallow the word back down. We walked in. The gate closed behind us with a soft click that felt too polite. No squeal, no protest. The playground made small noises as the wind moved through it, plastic creaks, a chain clink from a swing settling, the faint tap of a loose bolt somewhere inside the climbing structure. Sounds that were normal, but when everything else was quiet, they came forward like the park was clearing its throat. Lena swept her light around, not dramatic, just practical. I don't love that there's no one else, she said, and then immediately frowned at herself. Not that I want anyone else here, but you know what I mean. It's early-ish, Mason said, checking his phone. 10:30. In a town that sleeps. I tried to be casual. We're just looking. We leave. We tell ourselves the town is full of people who like being in bed by 9. End of mystery. Lena nodded, but she'd started walking toward the swings like she was drawn. Her flashlight beam caught the chains, made them shine silver in the dark. One swing was slightly turned, not hanging straight. The seat was wet, glossy, with condensation or recent rain. Mason hung back near the climbing cube. He looked toward the community center building at the edge of the park, where the windows were dark and the flagpole rope tapped softly against metal. You know what this is, right? He said, voice low. A normal park. I offered. He shook his head. It's you poking the bruise. That landed harder than it should have. He knew about the apartment doors. I hadn't told Lena. I didn't want to be the kind of friend who unloaded paranoia into a moving box. It's not a bruise, I said, too defensive. Lena turned, light on us, and raised an eyebrow. What bruise? Nothing, Mason said fast. I opened my mouth, closed it. My throat felt tight in a way that wasn't fear exactly. More like I'd been caught doing something immature. I just hate not knowing. Everyone has these rules, and nobody says why. I don't want to live somewhere where I'm tiptoeing around invisible boundaries, because everybody else is. Lena's expression softened, just a fraction. Okay, she said. So we get information. That's your thing. We get information, and we go home. The flashlight beam slid off my face and across the play structure again. It found a small object near the edge of the rubber matting, a rectangle of paper, pale against the black surface. Lena moved toward it, crouched. Is that a sticker? She asked. I stepped closer. It wasn't a sticker. It was a little laminated card, like a library card or an ID badge, face down. The edges were scuffed. Don't touch it, Mason said instantly, and the sharpness in his voice made my shoulders jump. Lena froze with her hand, hovering an inch above it. She looked back at us, annoyed and curious in equal parts. Why? Mason held up his hands like he was surrendering. Because, he said, choosing his words, if there's a reason people avoid this place after dark, it's probably the same reason you don't pick up random stuff in parking lots. Needles, razors, or just trouble. The wind pushed through again, and the swing chains made a faint, steady tick-tick-tick, like a clock that wasn't keeping time right. We stood there, 3 adults in a park built for kids, staring at a piece of laminated paper like it might bite. Lena straightened slowly, keeping her hands to herself. So what's the plan? She asked. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from an unknown number, local area code, no name attached. You shouldn't be in there. Gate gets locked. I read it once, then again, thumb suddenly damp on the screen. Mason noticed my face. What? I held the phone out. Lena leaned in, and her light washed the screen in bright white. For a second, nobody spoke. The park noises filled the space between us. The tap of rope on metal, the distant hush of a car, the soft clink of a swing settling into a new position. "Is that Nathan?" Lena whispered, already scrolling through her contacts like her fingers could solve it. "I didn't give my number to anyone in town except you two and my landlord," I said, and I heard the thin edge in my own voice. It made me sound younger than I wanted. Mason took a step toward the gate, instinctive, like he was already choosing exit. "Okay, we go. Someone's messing with you, or trying to help. Either way, we go." Lena looked from the phone to the laminated card on the ground, then to the darker part of the playground where her flashlight didn't quite reach. "Or," she said carefully, "we call the non-emergency line and tell them there's something. That someone texted us. That there's an item on the ground." "And say what?" Mason asked. "Hi, officer, we trespassed into a playground at night because the town vibe was weird, and now we got a spooky text." "It's not spooky," Lena snapped, then caught herself. It's a warning." My flaw, the one I didn't like admitting even to myself, rose up in my chest. The stubborn need to prove I wasn't afraid. The same impulse that made me check my door lock twice and then pretend I hadn't. The same impulse that had brought me here, to stand in the dark and act like this, was about curiosity and not control. We had a choice right there, with the smooth gate behind us and the card in front of us and the message glowing on my screen like a dare. Leave now and let the town keep its unspoken rules. Or make one call, take one step closer, and turn the half-said warning into something concrete. I looked at Lena. I looked at Mason. The swing chains ticked once more, slow and steady, as if the park itself was waiting for our answer. The phone buzzed again before any of us moved. This time it wasn't a text. It was a call. Unknown number, same local area code. Mason swore under his breath. "Don't answer that." Lena was already shaking her head. "Answer it. Put it on speaker." I hesitated. My thumb hovered, the same way it had months ago over a deadbolt. I hated that my body remembered that pause. I hated that Mason could probably see it in my shoulders. I answered. "Hello." Static at first. Not the cinematic kind, just the flat hiss you get when someone's phone is cheap or their signal is bad. Then breathing, too close to the mic. "You need to leave," a man said, middle-aged maybe, tight voice. Not panicked, but strained, like he was talking while walking fast. "Now, who is this?" Lena asked, leaning toward my phone. There was a pause. "I can't explain everything, but the gate locks automatically at 11. It doesn't matter if you're inside or not." Mason glanced at his phone. "It's 10:34. "That's not a lot of time," the man said, "and the override isn't responding tonight." "What override?" I asked. The man exhaled hard. "Jesus, listen to me. There's a timer on the gate. It's tied to the park lighting and the community center alarm system. They upgraded it last year after incidents. If you're inside when it locks, you're stuck until maintenance comes in the morning." "Why would they do that?" I said. "To keep people out," he snapped, and then softened. "To keep everyone out." Lena crouched again, eyes on the laminated card. "Is this yours?" she asked the phone, holding the card up like he could see it. "We found something on the ground." The breathing got louder. "Don't touch it. Please tell me you didn't touch it." "I didn't," she said. "What is it?" Another pause. Somewhere on his end, a door slammed. A car alarm chirped and stopped. "It's a badge," he said. "Access badge. Mine." Mason took a step back toward the gate again, testing it with his hand. It still moved freely. So why is it on the ground? Silence stretched long enough that the swing chains ticked twice. I dropped it, the man said finally. When I was looking for someone. For who? Lena asked. For my son. That landed like a weight on my chest. Not fear, responsibility. The kind you can't dodge without hating yourself later. How old? She asked gently. 7, he said. Name Escalib. I pictured the park in daylight chalk scribbles on the rubber matting, the worn spot under the swings where kids dragged their heels. 7 was exactly the age that belonged there. Is he missing right now? Mason asked. Yes, the man said. And before you ask, yes, I called the police. They're canvassing. But they can't get a unit here immediately, and they don't want civilians involved. I came anyway. Why here? I asked. Because he doesn't like the dark, the man said, and something in his voice cracked just a hair. And because this is where he comes when he's scared. He thinks if he can get inside, nothing bad can happen. My stomach twisted. Elliot, get control, I told myself. This is real. This isn't about you. What's your name? Lena asked. Mark, he said. Mark Jensen. We're here now, she said. Inside the park. No, Mark said immediately. No, that's not. We found your badge, she continued. We haven't seen anyone else. But if he's here, we can help look. Another car passed outside the fence, headlights sweeping briefly across the play structure. For a second, everything was visible, empty, then dark again. Mark's voice came back lower. If you're going to help, you need to be fast. And you need to understand something. What? I asked. The cameras are down. Mason let out a short laugh that had no humor in it. Of course they are. Power blipped around 9:40, Mark said. The community center alarm went to backup, but the park lights didn't come back on fully. The timer's still running, though, mechanical system. 11 o'clock, that gate locks. And you can't override it, Lena said. I've tried, Mark said. From the panel and from my phone. It's not responding. I looked at the gate again. Smooth, quiet, like it was already halfway to deciding something. Where did you last see him? I asked. Near the river path, Mark said. He got mad. We argued. He ran. Lena was already moving, sweeping her flashlight along the edges of the park, toward the darker corner near the trees. If he came in here, she said, he might have hidden. Kids hide when they're scared. Don't split up, Mason said automatically. We didn't listen. Not fully. Lena went left, toward the climbing cube and the trees beyond. Mason stayed near the gate, pacing, checking his phone every 30 seconds like he could will time to slow down. I moved toward the swings, my light tracing the ground, looking for footprints in the thin layer of grit. Caleb, I called, keeping my voice steady low. Hey, buddy. It's okay. We're here to help. The word buddy sounded wrong as soon as it left my mouth. Too familiar, too forced. The park answered with its small noises. The rope on the flagpole tapped. The swing chains whispered as the breeze shifted. Elliot, Mason called softly. 10:42. I know, I said. I circled the swings, scanning under the seats, behind the support poles. Nothing. My light caught the laminated badge again where it lay. I nudged it gently with my shoe. The photo side flipped up. A man in a staff polo, Mark, his picture. And below it, in smaller text, the logo for the parks department. I felt a flicker of anger. Why would the park lock with someone inside? I muttered. Keep kids from hanging out at night, Mason said, and to keep adults from doing worse. Lena's voice came from the trees. I found something. We both moved toward her. She was crouched near the edge of the rubber matting where it met dirt, pointing her light at a scuffed patch. Footprints, she said. Small sneakers. My heart kicked up. Fresh. Hard to tell, she said. But they're not filled in. And look, she shifted her light. A low crawl space under the play structure, barely big enough for a child. Plastic panel above it was scratched on the inside. He could be under there, she said. Caleb, I called again, closer now. It's okay. You can come out. Nothing. Mason checked his phone. 10:47. I dropped to my knees, ignoring the cold seeping through my jeans, and shone my light into the crawl space. Dust motes swirled. A discarded juice box. A small sneaker, blue, wedged against the back. One shoe. He's here, I said. Lena sucked in a breath. Caleb, honey, a sound came back. Not a voice. A soft, rhythmic sound, like someone trying not to cry and failing quietly. There you are, I said, relief flooding so fast it made me dizzy. Hey, it's okay. We're going to get you out. I reached in, careful, slow. My fingers brushed fabric, then skin. He flinched. Don't, he whispered. It's okay, I said. We're not going to hurt you. I don't want the lights, he said. They make the gate mad. Lena and Mason exchanged a look over my shoulder. The gate isn't mad, I said, because that was the truth I needed to believe. It's just broken. 10:50, Mason said. Elliot. I wriggled farther in, my shoulders scraping plastic. The space narrowed. Caleb was wedged deeper than I thought, curled tight. I'm stuck, he said. I pulled gently. He didn't budge. His shoes caught, Lena said, peering in. Or something's blocking him. The lights at the edge of the park flickered. Once. Twice. Then dimmed further, like someone lowering a dimmer switch. From behind us, the gate made a sound. Not a squeal. A solid, mechanical click, deeper and final. Mason spun. No, 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 no. He ran to the gate and shoved. It didn't move. Elliot, he said, voice tight. We have a problem. I was halfway inside the crawl space, one arm around a frightened child, when my phone buzzed again in my pocket. This time, it wasn't a call. It was a system notification. Playground gate locking sequence initiated. I looked at the dark beyond the fence, at the solid metal between us and the street, and felt that old, familiar paralysis try to climb back into my chest. And this time, I couldn't afford it. The gate didn't just lock. It settled. That was the sound that did it, the heavy finality of metal teeth meshing, followed by a low hum as the motor shut itself off. Mason grabbed the bars and rattled them anyway, like his hands might convince the mechanism it had made a mistake. Hey, he shouted toward the street. We're locked in here. His voice went nowhere. The fence swallowed it, and the night beyond stayed stubbornly ordinary cars passing, a porch light clicking on across the street, someone laughing faintly a block away. No one turned. No one looked. Stop shaking it, Lena said, sharper than she meant to. You're just wasting energy. Mason froze, hands still on the bars. He nodded once, jaw tight, and stepped back. Inside the crawl space, Caleb whimpered. The sound vibrated through the plastic panel against my shoulder. My arm had gone numb where it was pinned awkwardly. My wrist bent in a way that sent pins and needles up my forearm. I can't get him out like this, I said. Something's catching him. His shoe, maybe. Let me see, Lena said. She knelt beside me, then lay flat on her stomach, angling her phone flashlight into the space. Caleb, sweetheart, can you tell me where it hurts? My ankle, he said, and my back. His voice softened into her work voice. Calm, precise. Okay, don't move yet. We'll figure it out. Mason hovered uselessly, rubbing his hands together like he was trying to warm them. 10:52, he said. What happens now that it's locked? Alarms. Not immediately, Mark's voice came from my phone, still on speaker, tinny but present. There's a delay. It assumes no one's inside. That's comforting, Mason muttered. Lena shifted, squinting. His shoes hooked on something metal, she said. Bolt or bracket under the panel. And there's not enough clearance to lift him straight out. So we need to widen it, Mason said. Can we move the structure? We all looked at the play structure. Molded plastic, bolted into concrete footings, designed to survive hundreds of kids climbing on it at once. No, Lena said, but parts of it are modular. She stood and scanned the structure, tracing seams with her light. These panels are screwed in. If we can remove one, with what? Mason asked. Our teeth. I fished in my pocket with my free hand, heart sinking even as I already knew the answer. Keys, phone, wallet. No tools, I said. The park lights flickered again, dimmer this time, leaving the far corners of the playground in deeper shadow. The trees at the edge rustled, leaves whispering in a way that sounded almost like footsteps if you weren't paying attention. Mason stiffened. Did you hear that? Hear what? Lena asked. That, he said, pointing toward the trees. Another rustle. A snap. Pulse spiked. For a split second, my brain supplied every bad possibility. Someone else inside the fence. Someone watching, waiting. Then a raccoon burst out from under a bush, eyes flashing in our lights, trash bag clutched in its mouth like a prize. It froze, startled, then bolted toward the dumpster behind the community center. Misdirection. Relief hit hard enough to make me dizzy. Okay, Lena said, exhaling. No raccoon rescues. Mason laughed once, too loud, then cut it off. Sorry. Nerves. Attempt 1 came fast and failed faster. Lena tried easing Caleb's shoe off, working carefully around his ankle. He cried out when she twisted it the wrong way, a sharp, panicked sound that made my stomach clench. Nope, she said immediately, hands up. Too much swelling. I'm not risking it. Attempt 2 was brute force. Mason grabbed the panel edge and tried to flex it outward while Lena guided Caleb's leg. The plastic creaked, protesting. I felt the vibration through my shoulder, the structure shifting just enough to give false hope. Careful, I said. If that snaps. It didn't snap. The panel sprang back into place with a hollow thud. Caleb screamed, high and raw, and my arm went pins and needles dead as the space tightened again. Stop, Lena said. Stop. We're making it worse. My shoulder burned. Sweat ran down my neck despite the cool air. My phone buzzed again, Mark's voice urgent now. There's a maintenance shed, he said, on the far side of the community center. If you can get to it, there might be tools. Mason spun toward the building. I saw that. Chain link gate on the side, right? Yes, Mark said. But what? I asked. But it's inside the locked perimeter, Mark said. You'd have to go deeper into the park. I closed my eyes for half a second. Deeper meant farther from the gate, farther from help. Closer to the parts of the park the streetlights didn't touch. Point of no return territory. I'll go, Mason said immediately, like he needed to say it before anyone else could. I can run. Lena grabbed his sleeve. No, you don't know the layout back there. You'll trip or cut yourself. Or I played here as a kid, he said. I remember where it is. That surprised me. You never said that, he shrugged, already pulling away. Didn't seem relevant. It did now. This place had a history for him, a familiarity that might be useful or dangerous. 5 minutes, Lena said. If you're not back in 5, we reassess. Mason nodded and took off, sneakers slapping softly against rubber, then dirt as he cut past the basketball court toward the darker edge of the park. The minutes stretched. Caleb's breathing was shallow against my arm. My shoulder throbbed. My hand started to cramp where I was bracing myself awkwardly. "Elliot," Lena said quietly. "You okay?" "I will be," I said. It wasn't a lie. It was a postponement. A distant clang echoed from behind the community center, followed by a muffled curse. "That's him," Lena said, relief flashing across her face. Then the lights went out completely. Not a dramatic blackout, just off. The remaining glow from the streetlights barely reached us now, and the playground collapsed into a patchwork of dim shapes and deeper shadows. "Mark," Lena said into the phone. "What just happened?" "The backup failed," he said. His voice sounded far away now. "I'm trying to get someone," the call dropped. "Great," Mason's voice called from the darkness. "I found the shed." "Do you have tools?" Lena shouted back. A pause. "Yeah, bolt cutters, pry bar." Relief surged, then stalled when I heard something else. A low alarm tone, distant but growing louder. Not a siren. A warning beep, steady and insistent, coming from the community center. "What's that?" I asked. "That's the security system realizing something's wrong," Lena said. "Motion sensors, probably." "Police?" Mason asked. "Eventually," she said, "but not fast." Mason reappeared, breathless, carrying the tools like trophies. "Let's do this." They worked fast, Lena directing, Mason levering the panel just enough while I eased Caleb's leg free. The bolt scraped, then gave. Caleb slid forward into my arms, sobbing, clinging to my neck. The relief was so sharp it hurt. But before we could celebrate, the alarm tone changed. Louder, faster. And from the gate, the hum returned, not unlocking, but cycling, resetting. Mason looked at the gate, then at the tools in his hands. "Guys," he said, "I think it just disabled the manual release." Lena's face went pale. Meaning, he said slowly. "We're not getting out the way we came in." Behind us, somewhere deeper in the park, another light flickered on. Not white, red, emergency mode. And with it came the understanding that this wasn't just a rescue anymore. It was containment. The red light pulsed once every 2 seconds. It wasn't bright enough to see by, not really. It just reminded you that the dark was intentional. "Emergency mode means containment," Lena said, voice tight but steady. "It assumes vandalism or an active threat. It locks everything down until law enforcement clears it." "Active threat," Mason said. "We are the threat." "No," she said. "The system doesn't know the difference." Caleb whimpered against my chest. He was shaking now, adrenaline bleeding off, pain and fear rushing in to take its place. My arm throbbed where it had been pinned when I shifted him. A hot spike shot through my shoulder, and I had to bite back a sound. "Elliot," Lena said quietly. "Your arm, I can carry him," I said. The words came out harder than I meant. Control. I needed it. "Tell me where to go." Mason was already moving, scanning the fence line, the shadows beyond the basketball court. "There's a service corridor behind the community center," he said. "Used to be unlocked during events. Might still be. Or it's locked like everything else," Lena said. "Then we cut," he said, hefting the bolt cutters. His hands were shaking now. He wasn't hiding it anymore. We moved as a unit, slow and careful. Geography mattered. The playground sat like an island. Gate to the south, community center to the west, trees, and a maintenance road to the north. The service corridor ran along the building, narrow and unlit, a strip of asphalt just wide enough for a golf cart. The alarm tone changed again. Faster, more urgent. "That's escalation," Lena said. "It's registering movement." "Of course it is," Mason said. "Everything registers movement." Halfway down the corridor, Caleb stiffened. "I don't like this," he whispered. "I know," I said, adjusting my grip. My shoulders screamed in protest. "We're almost out." We weren't. At the end of the corridor stood another gate. Taller, thicker, industrial. A keypad mounted beside it blinked red. Mason swore. "This wasn't here." "It was," Lena said. "You just didn't notice it as a kid." The red light above us pulsed. Somewhere, a motor whined, then stopped. "Okay," Mason said, forcing calm. "We cut it." He set the bolt cutters at the base of the chain, squeezed. Nothing. He repositioned, squeezed harder. His face went red, neck cords standing out. The cutters slipped with a metallic snap, jolting his hands. "Damn it," he said, breath ragged. "This is hardened steel." Lena looked at the keypad. It might still accept a badge. All three of us looked down at the laminated card in my pocket. Mark's badge. "It dropped for a reason," Mason said. "He said the override wasn't responding." "That was remote," Lena said. "This is local." The alarm tone stuttered, then steadied again. Time felt thick, syrupy. Shifted Caleb to one arm and fumbled the badge out with the other. My fingers were clumsy, half numb. "Caleb," I said softly, "I need you to hold onto my neck. Tight." He did, trusting. That cut deeper than fear. I swiped the badge. The keypad beeped. Once. "Red, again," Lena said. I swiped again. Nothing. "Try the shed," Mason said suddenly. "The panel Mark mentioned. If we can kill power locally." "Power's already unstable," Lena said. "You could lock us in worse." The red light pulsed. A new sound joined it. Distant, but unmistakable. Sirens. Relief flared, sharp and bright, and then dimmed as quickly when the sirens didn't get closer. They stayed distant, moving parallel, not toward. "They don't know we're inside," Mason said. "Or they do," Lena said. "And they're following protocol." Protocol. The word tasted bitter. Caleb started crying again, louder now. His small body shook against mine, each sob jarring my injured shoulder, until white sparks danced at the edge of my vision. "Stop," I said, not to him, to myself, to the creeping paralysis. I couldn't freeze, not now. I looked at the gate again. At the hinges, too smooth. The memory clicked into place. The first thing that had felt wrong. "Mason," I said. "The hinge," he looked. Understanding dawned, slow, and then all at once. "If it locks like the playground gate, from the bottom up," Lena finished. "Not the latch. The pivot." Mason was already at it, wedging the pry bar into the narrow gap where hinge met post. He leaned his weight into it. Metal groaned. The alarm shrieked. "Again," Lena said. "Lower." He adjusted, pushed. The hinge shifted, millimeters at first, then more. A sharp crack rang out as one bolt sheared. Mason cried out, dropping the bar. Blood welled along his palm where the metal had bitten deep. "Keep going," I said. My voice sounded far away to my own ears. He picked it back up, teeth clenched, pried again. Another crack. Then a third. The gate sagged, listing inward like a tired thing. "Now," Lena said. "Elliot, move." I ran. It wasn't graceful. My shoulder flared with every step. My breath came in harsh gasps, but I ran. Mason grabbed the gate and hauled it the rest of the way open, tearing it from the last stubborn bolt with a sound like a gunshot. We spilled through. The alarm cut off abruptly, replaced by the ordinary night sounds of the street cars, wind, a radio somewhere playing softly. The contrast was dizzying. I stumbled, nearly went down, caught myself on a street sign. Lena took Caleb from me, easing him to the curb, murmuring reassurances. Mason leaned against the fence, blood dripping from his hand, chest heaving. For a moment, none of us spoke. Then headlights washed over us. A police cruiser rolled up, slow, cautious. Another followed. An officer stepped out, hand resting near his holster. "Everyone okay?" I laughed. A short, broken sound. "Define okay." They took statements. An ambulance for Caleb. Wrapped Mason's hand. Looked at my shoulder and told me I'd torn something that would take weeks to heal if I was lucky. Mark arrived, wild-eyed, and dropped to his knees in front of his son, crying without embarrassment. No one judged him for it. The officers didn't scold us. They looked tired. One of them glanced back at the playground, dark and sealed again now, and shook his head. "System S been touchy," he said. "Couple of incidents. They keep it locked down at night now." "Incidents like what?" I asked. He met my eyes, hesitated, then said, "People getting trapped, people getting hurt." He didn't elaborate. They let us go home in the early morning, adrenaline drained, limbs heavy, the town settling back into itself like nothing had happened. But as I lay awake later, shoulder burning, the sound that came back to me wasn't the alarm or the sirens. It was the gate. How smoothly it had moved, like it had done this before. The ER smelled like disinfectant and old coffee. It was almost morning by the time they finished with us. The night had thinned into that gray-blue hour when everything looks flatter and quieter than it should. Caleb slept on a narrow hospital bed with his leg elevated, a soft cast wrapped around his ankle like a cocoon. The doctor said it was a sprain with a hairline fracture, painful, but fixable. He would heal. Kids usually do. Mason sat across from me with his hand wrapped in gauze, fingers stiff and pink at the tips. He kept flexing them, testing what still worked. A nurse had warned him to stop. He nodded when she said it, then did it again as soon as she turned away. Lena paced, slowly, measured, like she was counting steps without meaning to. She'd been the calm one all night, the organizer, the voice that kept us moving. Now that there was nothing left to solve, the energy had nowhere to go. "You tore your rotator cuff," the doctor told me, not unkindly. "Partial. No surgery right now, but you're in for physical therapy and a sling for a while." I nodded. The sling already pulled at my neck, a constant reminder every time I shifted. Pain radiated down my arm in a dull, persistent line. It wasn't sharp anymore. It was the kind of pain that settles in and makes itself at home. Mark sat in the corner, phone pressed to his ear, murmuring to someone, his wife, I assumed. He kept glancing at Caleb like he was afraid the boy might evaporate if he looked away too long. When he finished the call, he crossed the room and stopped in front of me. "I don't know how to thank you," he said. His eyes were red, rimmed with exhaustion. "I shouldn't have let him run. I shouldn't have," Lena stepped in gently. "He's 7, she said. "He got scared. That happens." Mark nodded, swallowing hard. "The badge," he said. "I dropped it when I climbed the fence. I thought I'd be quicker, I thought." He trailed off. None of us filled the silence. 2 police officers came by later, one young and one with gray at his temples. They took formal statements this time, pens scratching quietly as we talked. They asked about the gate, the alarms, the timing. They asked how we got out. Mason showed them his hand. "That's how," the older officer frowned. "You damaged city property." "Yes," Mason said evenly. "I did." There was a pause. The officer looked at the younger one, then back at Mason. "We'll note it as emergency action," he said, "given the circumstances." "Given the kid," Mason said. The officer didn't argue. They told us there would be an internal review, that the Parks Department had already flagged the system for issues. that the gate timers were meant to deter vandalism and loitering, not trap people. Words stacked on words, neat and bureaucratic. "What about the cameras?" Lena asked. "Down during the incident," the younger officer said. "We've had trouble keeping them operational." "How long?" she pressed. He shrugged. "A while. When they left, the room felt smaller. By mid-morning, they discharged Caleb. Mark carried him out, careful and protective, like the world had become something fragile overnight. Before they went, Mark stopped again. "They're going to ask me to keep quiet," he said, voice low. "About the system, about what happened." Lena met his eyes. And I don't think I will," he said. There was resolve there now, thin but real. "Not anymore." Outside, the town had woken up. People walked dogs. A delivery truck idled outside the bakery. Someone swept their front steps. Ordinary life flowed around us, indifferent and steady. The playground sat 2 blocks away, invisible from where we stood but present in all of our minds. Mason drove me home. His bandaged hand rested awkwardly on the steering wheel. Neither of us talked much. When we passed Maple Street, I looked away before I could see the fence. Lena texted later to say she'd made an appointment for me with a physical therapist she trusted. Control again. A small kindness shaped like a plan. The next few weeks blurred. My shoulder ached constantly. Sleeping was difficult. Every time I rolled the wrong way, pain snapped me awake, heart racing, breath shallow. More than once, I lay there listening to the quiet of my apartment, cataloging sounds the way I had that night, the hum of the fridge, a car door slamming somewhere outside, footsteps in the hallway. Each sound asked a question my body answered before my mind could. Mason healed faster than I did physically, slower emotionally. He joked about the scar forming across his palm, but he stopped coming by after dark. When I asked him about it, he shrugged. "Just tired," he said. Lena kept busy. Work, friends, movement. She didn't linger when she visited, but she always checked the locks before she left, a new habit she didn't comment on. The town talked quietly. The playground stayed closed at night, officially for maintenance. Temporary signs went up, then came down, then went up again. The gate hinges were replaced. This time they squealed. I noticed that the first evening I walked past after sunset. The sound was loud and ugly, metal complaining the way it should. I stood there longer than necessary, listening, until a woman walking her dog gave me a strange look. I didn't go inside. A month later, a short article ran in the local paper. Buried on page 3. Child injured in park after hours incident. Safety review underway. It mentioned a malfunctioning gate. It did not mention alarms or containment, or how easily a system could decide you were something to be managed instead of someone to be helped. Mark sent me a message once. A picture of Caleb on a couch, foot propped up, grinning with a superhero comic spread open on his lap. He asks about you, the text read. Says you're the one who didn't let go. I didn't know how to respond to that, so I sent a thumbs up and hoped it translated as something warmer. Life settled. That's what people say when things don't explode. It settled. I worked. I healed. I learned the rhythm of the town, the bakery rush, the quiet afternoons, the way everyone avoided the park when the sun dipped low, even now. Especially now. One evening, months later, I stood at my window and watched the streetlights flicker on. The glow stopped short of the playground, as always. The fence was just a dark line against darker trees. For a moment, I imagined the gate moving, smooth, silent. Then a car passed. Someone laughed. The world asserted itself again. I closed the window, locked it, and went back to my almost ordinary life, carrying the knowledge with me like a small, persistent weight. Everyone in town avoids the playground after dark. Now I do too. That's tonight's story. If it gives you chills, make sure to like, subscribe to Mia Horror Stories, and tap the bell so you never miss what's coming next. And if you're still brave enough, there are more dark tales waiting for you right here on the channel. Go watch another if you dare.